Hi, Okenfe here.
Okay. Hello, Sadick.
Yes, Bella.
Okay. So,
So we do have, I believe it's Okenfe.
Yes.
All right, perfect. We have Okenfe, we have Mambo,
yeah,
and who else do we have on the line?
yourself.
And myself. Okay,
yeah.
perfect. So uh,
Can start
I
now.
think we can start right now.
Okay. Okay. So you can go.
All right. Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Saturday, the 21st of January, 2017. A day after America's new president, Donald Trump, gets into office. And as usual, every Saturday between 2 and 4, we have our flagship program, Anything Africa, here on Jersey Ghana Radio, where we get to discuss, among other things, the prominent issues that are facing the African continent and the African worldwide. Today is a special day. We have uh, our own intellectuals. First, we have Mambo C, who is not new to this program. She's actually the queen of this program from Siren Protectors of the Rainforest. And we do have Mr. Okenfe Labate, who is a senior health action associate as part of the field team at Families USA based in Washington, D.C. Mr. Okenfe worked with state advocates in the Northeast region to advance healthcare, justice, and health equality, specifically offering support and resources for the work state advocates are doing to implement and improve the Affordable Care Act, which in other words is called the Obamacare, and by the way, which the Republican Party is trying to eliminate for millions of Americans. And Mr. Okenfe is working hard with state officials to try and see that people get this as part of their life and health insurance policy system. Mr. Okenfe also has made progress towards other key health policies issues. Mr. Okenfe is not new to this program. He's been here before, and he's actually a political commentator on a variety of issues. He has worked as a lobbyist, policy advocate, government relations manager, and as a regional field organizer during the 2008 presidential campaign for the Obama administration. And he was a delegate to the 2008 Democratic National Convention. Mr. Okenfe, welcome to Jersey Ghana Radio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Just before you go further, just a little quick addendum. So I'm no longer, so since my last appearance on the show, I've changed jobs. So I'm no longer with Families USA, but I'm now working on community issues with my Maimonides Hospital in Brooklyn, but still working on healthcare issues.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for the addendum, the correction. Later on, we're going to have Sigarada, Shura, or Sofie, as we call her. Sofie is the vice chairperson of the Ethiopian People's Congress for United Struggle, what's alias Shengo, the largest coalition of Ethiopian opposition political parties, civil societies, and prominent individuals. She's vice chair of MEDIN, the Ethiopian Democratic Party, and a member of the Health Committee. She's also Black is Back coalition member, and she's dedicated to the diplomatic and peaceful struggle to bring fundamental changes in Ethiopia in order to build a democratic society in Ethiopia. So later on, Sofie is going to join us. In the meantime, I believe we have one more person who just joined us. Is this Foster Ditah?
Yes, please. This is Foster Ditah. I'm calling in from Tennessee, United States.
Yeah, perfect. Mambo, would you mind giving us an introduction for Mr. Foster?
I can go ahead. This is Dr. Ditah. I'm
Okay.
originally from Cameroon, West Africa, English speaking, a physician by training. I live in Jackson, Tennessee. I've been in the United States since 2000. I have family still in Cameroon and here in the United States.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Ditah. Among the topics we'll be discussing today, we're looking at what is going on in Cameroon. The situation is getting deteriorated and it's becoming a silent genocide. Maybe we shouldn't call it that now, but the alarming rate at which things are happening is kind of scary. And we do have Mr. Foster here who would give us an insight. And Mambo is also on the line to help us through understanding what is actually going on the ground and how we can work together here and push the necessary channels for bringing justice to those who are being oppressed in the Cameroon. And also, we're going to be looking at the issue regarding Ethiopia and the Gambia briefly. Then we would also be talking about the legacy of the outgoing president, Barack Obama. We will be looking at his legacy in Africa and possibly touch on some of the tidbits of what the current regime is looking at in terms of policy and business with Africa. So welcome, gentlemen and lady, to Jesse Ghana Radio. Let me say this. Our regular host, Mr. Kofi Ayim, is out of the country, so this is Sadick Abubakar sitting in for Kofi Ayim. So let me start by asking this, Mr. Okenfe. This question goes to you.
Okay.
Let's look at first the legacy of Barack Obama, so we can get that out of the way in Africa. What do you see as a take home of what Obama has done in Africa?
Sure. Thanks for the question. So just off the top, when we tend to talk about the legacy of Barack Obama, especially within the African community, there is some level that he did not do anything. So now, at the same time, I think even as we are asking what legacy Obama has had in Africa, on our own, we've also got to start asking our own leaders what have they done for our people. Those are the presidents of our various African countries. So that's got to be number one. And then everything else has got to be secondary. But having said that, let me attempt to say a few things in terms of what I think he has done. So when he took office in 2009, he said that his administration was pretty much going to give a full attention to existing U.S.-Africa trade or aid relationships and make adjustments when and where necessary. And if possible, he's going to initiate expansions also where necessary. So for me, I think he kept his word. And let me dig on a few things. Number one, he So number one, he ensured that President Clinton's African Growth and Opportunity Act, I'm sure some of you are familiar with AGOA, was pretty much taken to the next level because he made sure that African Growth and Opportunity Act was renewed for another 10 years. And so that was one. And so that was renewed to about 2025. The second thing he did was he also ensured that I think it's called the President's Emergency Program on AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, which was initiated under George W. Bush, also got a lot more finances than even what the Bush administration has previously initiated. So since 2009, when you look at that PEPFAR itself, the number of recipients increased from 2.5 million to 9.5 million at the end of 2015, where we had the numbers. So 1.5 million babies have been born AIDS-free to mothers infected with HIVs. And at the same time, they are having a whole new target that's going to meet another 12.9 million people who are currently on treatment that will be lasting through 2017. Now, when you also have a concern about the future of Africa, and that the other thing, and when he said that, Africa belongs to Africa and whatnot, and to that end, we all know that he established the Young African Leadership Initiative, which is pretty much helping to develop the next generation of African leaders. I've seen some of these people, I've mentored some of them, I've taken some of them to a few places in New Jersey, so I know how important that program is. Another thing he did was he launched what is today the biggest and most expanded business relationship between the U.S. and Africa through the U.S.-Africa Business Forum. So this forum focused on several sectors important to our African economies: finance, capital, investment, infrastructure, power, energy, agriculture, consumer goods, and information technology. So till date, that program has given a comprehensive business and trade relationship to Africa. Not even China came close. Now, a lot of people tend to say, oh, China has done this in Africa. What China is doing, China is giving crumbs, but at the same time, they bring in 1 million Chinese to do the work that Africans can do. Let that sink in for a minute. The other thing was the USABF was the most successful part of the 2014 U.S. African Leaders Summit in D.C., the largest gathering of African heads of state and government ever convened by any American president. Now, that gathering resulted in billions of dollars of investment in Africa, and U.S.-Africa trade has subsequently grown significantly since then. Obama also took U.S.-Africa relationship to the next level with the launching of 3 very important projects, namely Power Africa, Trade Africa, and the President Advisory Council on Doing Business in Africa. The Power Africa initiative itself leveraged nearly $43 billion in commitment from all over 120 public and private sector partners. The Trade Africa Partnership started with East Africa, where 24% increase in export of goods from the region was recorded between just 2013 and 2014. Now, 3 years after the launch of Power Africa, several U.S. government departments and agencies announced and expanded Power Africa commitments. The Overseas Private Investment Corporation exceeded its original $1.5 billion commitment of 18 months and has since pledged another $1 billion. The Power Africa roadmap, I'm just going to try to run through this real quick so that we can have a quick conversation. It's a few things. Under the Obama presidency, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, MCC, has nearly doubled its initial $1 billion commitment and is implementing power compacts in Ghana, Malawi, Benin Republic, Liberia, and an energy sector transfer program in Sierra Leone. He was also instrumental to the promotion of the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, which met in 2014 in Morocco and Kenya in 2015, and which also resulted in increase in trade missions. Again, in 2015, Feed the Future, one of his initiatives, helped over 9 million smallholder farmers, food producers, and rural families adopt innovations and new practices to improve agricultural productivity. In turn, these farmers, many of them women, boosted their income by more than $800 million. So when you look at countries such as Zambia, Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, among others, for first appreciation, you can see how this happened. Again, since 2013, the administration has supported the Global Open Data for Agriculture and Nutrition, which with over 300 partners make agricultural and nutritional relevant data available, accessible, and usable for unrestricted use. So let's put all this in perspective. Obama has done for Africa what a collection of our African leaders have now done for the continent since we got independence from Britain. Now, a lot of things, people tend to say that perception is everything. But when you look at the modus operandi of Barack Obama, even with his work in the U.S., he's not really interested in perception, but his interest has always been, how does this help the little man, right? And so that's why all these things that he did are something that goes directly to helping the urban poor, not necessarily where our leaders can be benefiting and just eating up top. So when you put all this in perspective, and when you do more research about it, you will understand that the legacy and what Obama did for Africa is actually a lot. And I just, for some reason, I think as Africans we tend to underappreciate and undervalue a lot of these things and these programs that he put in place. And at the same time, I mean, it's not just setting up buildings and whatnot. All these things are also going to take time to incubate. They're going to take some time to also come on. So that's when you look at certain structural developments. So there's a difference with a lot of these things that he did than having the Chinese bring their people to build an airport in Africa. So there's a lot of differences in that. So on my end, I think his overall legacy was good. Of course, we'll always ask that more can be done. So with the administration of this new president, Donald Trump, I mean, I don't even know what Donald Trump is going to do for America. So I don't want to speculate on what he's even going to do for Africa.
Well, thank you, Brother Okenfe. I really have been following the things you've been saying with what has happened with AGOA, with the trade and power systems that he developed, with also the Young African Leadership Initiative. I do agree with you that some of these are very huge roadmaps to future, development, and even within the present time, we can see some of the impact that is making. should we be looking for a reversal in some of these with this new administration? I know we don't want to speculate, but I'm not sure if you've seen the what do you call it? Some of the questions the administration has already started asking. There was recently a 4-page document that was released among the current leadership about what they should be looking at in Africa. Can you shed some light on that for us?
So I haven't in particular seen that document because I was also away in Nigeria handling some business. But I think what is going to happen, which is something that tends to happen with president once they get in. So I think once he gets into office and settles down, and then he's got his staff in place, the career staff at the State Department begins to brief him on programs that has been going on in Africa. So I think he's going to hopefully make an informed decision in terms of working on African growth and opportunities and development. So as I said earlier, so he's right now he of course is getting suggestions, but I was listening to the radio yesterday with regards to the situation in Gambia. The U.S. president normally have a senior advisor on African affairs. So that position hasn't been filled yet. And so right now, we don't even know who is advising him on that particular situation or what was going on. So that remains to be seen. So for me, I just want to be cautiously optimistic because personally, I don't really hold him in high esteem and trust that much. So I just want to be cautiously optimistic, see what kind of programs that he's going to come up with, see if there's going to be a reverser in some of the programs that President Obama implemented in Africa and how he's going to scale some of those things back. So that it still remains to be seen. He's not someone, he's very unpredictable. So he's not someone that we can put words in his mouth, because you could say one thing today and a few hours later he would do something totally different.
That is absolutely true. Well, in the memo, he talked about looking at the challenges between what America is getting out of Africa as opposed to what China is getting. Are we being beat by the Chinese? So, I mean, it's a whole lot of mumbo jumbo, and he's talked about how America should be giving aid to dictators and governments that are corrupt. I mean, some of them actually you can agree with, but
which government in Africa is it corrupt? Which one?
Well,
which one?
That's an interesting question, yeah.
That says a lot already, right? If you're talking about you don't want to give aid to governments that are corrupt in Africa, which one isn't corrupt?
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about corruption on this side of the aisle as well. But let's quickly go to our brother from the Cameroon.
Hello again. This would be me.
Yeah, Brother Fauta.
Yes, this would be me.
All right. Thank you very much. Please talk to us about what is going on in Cameroon. I have heard some terrible stories, and it scares me.
Indeed, I'm intimidated, and not only intimidated, but I'm sad. I summarize it by saying my heart bleeds. We've been living the situation for a long time, and so for me to put it in context, please allow me give you some historical perspective.
Sure.
Now, Cameroon is really put together by the coming of of two regions, French-speaking part, which was under French rule until 1959, and an English-speaking part, which was under British rule until 1961. In the British system, we operate under the Anglo-Saxon system of governance, which would include the common law as well as the Anglo-Saxon system of education. And under French rule, they operate under civil law and the Francophone system of governance. In 1959, French-speaking Cameroon gained independence, and in 1961, English-speaking Cameroon had what they called a plebiscite, and at that time, they gave them two options, whether they wanted independence by joining Nigeria or by joining Cameroon or by joining East Cameroon, and at the time they voted to join East Cameroon on the condition of a federation. Unfortunately, shortly after that plebiscite in 1972, they organized a referendum that had two answer choices, one being we and the other being yes, and we being the French word for yes, to vote to scrap down federation and make it just a united republic. And it had been under the rule of Amadou Ahidjo since inception. In 1982, Ahidjo stepped down and passed power onto Paul Biya under a presidential decree to continue the rule, and shortly thereafter, Paul Biya scrapped the name from the United Republic of Cameroon back to La République du Cameroun. And you may note that the name that French-speaking Cameroon had before coming into this federation was La République du Cameroun. Unfortunately, before then, West Cameroon had, which is the English-speaking portion of Cameroon, had thriving multi-party politics. And shortly after coming together, that was cracked down, and the country came down to a uniparty political system. And in 1990, English-speaking Cameroon felt like that wasn't appropriate, and so they progressed to launch a party in Bamenda called the Social Democratic Front, headed by Nigel Furundi. That brought back a lot of upheavals, and during the launch, there were actually killings in Bamenda during that period, and that revived the political atmosphere in Cameroon. And it stayed tense, and in 1992, it's widely believed that Nigel Furundi won the presidential elections, but in Cameroon, by presidential decree, you can appoint and dismiss any member of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is in charge of reading those elections. And after several months, Biya was declared as that winner, and that led to turmoil. There were destruction of property, mass arrests, detentions, and killings. And because of all the unrest, Anglophone-speaking Cameroon quickly realized their values were going away, so it resulted in the formation of an all-Anglophone conference, one, and an all-Anglophone conference, two, that eventually took place in the Anglophone-speaking regions of Cameroon. That resulted in Cameroon changing its constitution in 1996 to allow for decentralization, in a way, federation, more so towards 10 regions. That had not been implemented till date. In 2008, that 1996 constitution also mandated that the president can have a maximum of 2 terms, and each term being 7 years. In 2008, Biya realized that his term was about to get up, so he connived with his crew to change the constitution again and said there were a lot of people clamoring for him to run again for elections, and the constitution does not allow him to do that. He would like to do so again, so they changed the constitution, as in every dictatorship, to give him the opportunity to continue to win those elections. Under all of this historical background, there's been frustration and boiling, and there's been gradual assimilation of the Anglophone into the Francophone system. All the public exams in Cameroon are very little based on merit, as it is based on who you know in the government. And increasingly, almost all the professional schools in Cameroon are admitting mainly the Francophone-speaking Cameroonians and not much of the Anglophone-speaking Cameroonians. And increasingly, even in Anglophone schools, there is this increasing concern that Francophones are now coming over to teach Anglophones. And in a way, they claim they don't even speak the right English. And so they're worried they're on teaching their children. The same thing was also applying to our courts. The French system is the civil system, as I earlier alluded to, and the Anglophone system is the common law system. Our courts are expected to be administered on the common law basis with common law judges. But increasingly, they're sending the Francophone judges to the Anglophone system to preside over cases that are presented in English, a language they do not understand well, and under the auspices of the common law, which is not also their training, civil law. So in October, since 2015, the lawyers formed the Anglophone Lawyers Association, met and tabled a memo to the president crying most of these grievances. And again, in 2016, they followed it up with another memo that they did not listen to. So in October 2016, the lawyers decided to go on a sit-down strike in Anglophone-speaking Cameroon, demanding for long-lasting solutions to these problems. The government did not listen. And so in November 2016, the lawyers decided to just stage a peaceful walk to the courts in this Anglophone-speaking region to cry the ongoing assimilation of Anglophones. Unfortunately, they were met with brute force, and lawyers in their professional gowns were beaten, tortured, and many of them were taken to prison. Some of their wigs were taken by the forces of law and order, and they went ahead and decried this even more. In November 2016, the teachers also followed suit and complained that they are unteaching their students and their children, and they're no longer benefiting from the Anglo-Saxon system of education that they've prided themselves with. And so they called on Cameroon to look into the federation that had initially been the goal of maintaining a bijural and bicultural system in this federation. On that backdrop, the government did not listen, so the teachers followed the lawyers to also call on a strike, a peaceful no-school strike in the Anglophone-speaking regions of Cameroon. So I would say since November 2016, all the schools, up from nursery school up to university in Anglophone Cameroon, have not been operational. On this backdrop, they quickly again realized that all of their problems is because they are not protected as a West Cameroon state that came together as an equal partner in this union. So they formed a civil society consortium, the Cameroon Civil Society Consortium, to meet and propose solutions that would be geared towards addressing all of these problems that they've realized are common among all of the Anglophone-speaking Cameroonians. They proposed for the government to meet with its different trade unions and try to solve the problem. And fundamentally, they emphasized to the government that it may be nice to return to the federation that we voted for in a plebiscite in 1961, because they think in a federated situation, we would be able to protect a bicultural nature and a bijural nation. The government proceeded to say Cameroon is one, it's indivisible, and but called on dialogue and negotiations to see how business as usual could resume in Anglophone-speaking Cameroon. It's widely believed that within those months, the government tried multiple tricks to bribe the leaders, to bribe the different traditional leaders in this region to no avail. And sitting at table to negotiate, they invited members of the consortium to negotiate, and they had at least 3 sit-down negotiations involving some of the leaders of the consortium. Those discussions were not progressing as the consortium had wished for, and so they called and the next term not to resume in school until their grievances are collectively heard and listened to. They called for a peaceful ghost town sit-in strike in Anglophone-speaking Cameroon and demanded that the government listen to their problems. Unfortunately, in December 2016, during some of these protests, the government has, in a way, militarized all of Anglophone-speaking Cameroon. At least 4 individuals were killed on the 8th of December in Bamenda. Some were killed in Kumba. Personally, I lost a relative. He is buried 2 miles from our home in Cameroon, in Bamenda.
Sorry to hear that.
And his name is Clement Ngwa. As the deliberations continued and the sit-in strikes continued, the government earlier this week, despite all the militarization and the ongoing killing and arbitrary arrest of more than 40 citizens from Anglophone-speaking Cameroon, and permit me say they arrest us in this common law jurisdiction and transport them and present them to a military court in the civil law system in French-speaking Cameroon, far off from their homelands and far off from their families and far off from lawyers that are versed with their law system who can defend them. Earlier this week, the government progressed to declare that a consortium to be an illegal organization, banned it, and also arrested its leaders. As we are speaking, since the 17th of January, Barrister Agbo Felix Nkonga, Dr. Fontaine Neba Barrister Agbo was the president of the consortium. Dr. Fontaine was the Secretary General of the consortium, and Mantio BBC is a civil person trader who is protesting, and all of them are being tried as we speak in the military court in Yaoundé. As we speak, they've been charged with terrorism, rebellion against the state. They claim they're inciting civil unrest and that they are breaching the constitution. And currently they have a trial date set for February the 1st, 2017 in a military court. Contrary to this, all of these leaders have preached for a peaceful protest, and in fact, they wrote a memo condemning any acts of violence in any of these protests. Following up to this, you may know that MTN, which is a major provider of mobile services in Cameroon, it's a South African company, had progressed to discontinue internet service on mobile phones in the Anglophone-speaking regions of Cameroon, in a way cutting everybody from communication. You would admit that with the birth of the smartphones, all the atrocities that were previously hidden in Cameroon are no longer hidden because its citizens can capture it on their mobile phones, and using communication tools such as WhatsApp or Facebook, communicate them to us directly, and they were no longer hidden from the administration, and they were no longer being covert as the government would like it to be. So they're progressing to deprive the citizens of internet, and in a way controlling that so that all the atrocities they can commit within this region would not leak out to the public. Let me also note that one of the parliamentarians in Cameroon, Honorable Weber, Joe Weber, stood up on the general floor and decried this. He said, our grandparents came into this union thinking these are brothers that can coexist, and now you would go on our university campuses, rape, torture, maim our kids, take them to prison, charge them with treason. They've approached university campuses, and the kids are there without a single weapon. They are complaining and shouting no violence. They would progress to arrest them, rub their faces in mud. We've got all the videos. If you are interested, I can probably share a lot of them with you. Drop their faces in mud, attempt to rape children, and when they are arrested, they are taken away from Anglophone-speaking region to French-speaking region. And fundamentally, we've asked the government, why can't we go back to a referendum? This is a country that was put together based on a plebiscite, and asking these people, do you want to join Nigeria or do you want to join Cameroon? We have international boundaries, world recognized by the United Nations as former British Southern Cameroon that came into this union with La République du Cameroon to form the Federal Republic of Cameroon. Can we go back to a referendum and ask the Anglophones what form they are interested in at this time? And the government is not willing to do that. They've cut off all supplies. My little sister informed me the other day that now they're threatening them, and they've asked the public media in Cameroon to no longer cover this event. And you would note that all of this is happening in the northwest and southwest, which is the Anglophone-speaking regions of Cameroon, and all of Francophone-speaking region of Cameroon is progressing with business as usual. They have schools that are in session. None of them have joined so far in the sit-in strike. And the entire region of Anglophone-speaking Cameroon is militarized. With the destruction and cutting off of internet communication in the middle of the night, the majority of its leaders are being arrested. People are waking up in the morning and realizing that fellow friends and brothers are missing. And then the government would release some of them and then arrest even more. So as we speak, the situation is really deplorable, and everybody is living in terror and fear in this region of Cameroon. And more people are being killed as we speak. I would note that I think the United Nations Security Council in Africa was meeting in Ethiopia recently, and the President Guterres said if they receive more than 500 signature emails from the people of the Cameroons, they may bring it up to their conference. I think they received more than 700. I'm not sure if they brought it up in that conference or not. In late November, I think the State Department of the U.S. published on its website decrying the abuse of these Anglophone citizens in Cameroon, and called on the government to refrain from arresting peaceful protesters without any weapon. And I think within the last couple of days, the Amnesty International also released another memo to that fact. So as we're speaking, the Anglophone Cameroonian is silently being killed. You know, the trouble is how many Aleppos and how many Rwandas and how many Bosnias are going to happen before we see meaningful intervention, before people are dead. You know, we are a small group of people. We are a minority in Cameroon. We form up 20% of that country. And as we all know, in a minority, unless they're protected, they're gradually being exterminated. And my fear is, as we are speaking, more and more and more of those from English-speaking Cameroon are being killed, they're being raped, they're being transported to courts in foreign cities from where they live, and their families don't even have access to them, and they are being charged with terrorism.
Thank you very much, Brother Foster. This is quite sad and heartbreaking. On our part, I believe Mambo can actually talk about what we are also doing. We actually are trying to reserve the ECOSOC chamber for a forum to discuss this. We also are trying to get 3 member states of the United Nations to petition the Security Council to really take some action in terms of this. But let's go back to Brother Okenfe. Brother Okenfe, are you here with us? Brother Okenfe? Hello, Brother Okenfe. All right. Mambo, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, Mambo. Do you mind giving us some of the reports you two have from the Cameroon? It's kind of
Well, Dr. Foster basically hit on every single piece of information that has happened from the beginning to the end, you know. And Brother Sadick, I'm really grateful that, like, you know, you're willing to help out in this plight. Um, we are ready to do a conference at EcoSoc Chamber whenever it becomes available. Um, we have people that are willing to come down from Boston. We have people willing to come down from Buffalo. We have people willing to come down from Maryland. We have people willing to fly in from California. You know, it's not something that people are taking lightly. I'm sure there are people that are probably going to try to come in from Belgium, you know, because this situation is something that has everybody on edge. You know, a lot of Cameroonians living here after the car of one of the leaders was firebombed. You know, can you imagine, you know, going in for a meeting and then coming out and your car is completely firebombed? You know, and this guy, it was pretty like insane to watch all this because we weren't expecting any of this. You know, how can people come out peacefully to protest? You know, and then you turn around and shoot them with live bullets. That's not something that is, you know, you can watch anywhere in the world and be okay with that. You know, um, I am looking forward to doing as much as I can as a Cameroonian, you know, because the insane thing is that, like, you know, I still have family there. I live in America, but, you know, like, my culture, everything that is me is Cameroonian, you know, and it's very, very painful to watch and see all these images coming from there.
definitely, definitely. I do agree
And
with
it would
you.
be really crazy for me to just sit down or any Cameroonian sitting out in the diaspora to not respond. You
Yeah,
know,
not just being a Cameroonian, even the fact that I'm a Ghanaian. I feel the pain because um, not looking at just the fact that we're all Africans, but we're all one blood. And what affects one person is actually affecting all of us. So I think
Absolutely.
it's the most responsible thing to do. They say those who sit by and watch injustice uh, and say they are indifferent are actually biased in the side on the side of the what do you
oppressor.
call it
Oppressor.
the oppressor. So we need to take action. My concern has been the fact that some of these things keep happening. We saw Rwanda, we've seen Burundi, we've seen until with the intervention of ECOMOG in the Gambia,
Gambia.
we would have seen a whole different situation in the Gambia as well. And it looks like we we as Africans do not have a formidable channel where we can say, just in case this particular leader is doing this, we have what do you call it, an emergency response team that can take care of the situation so we do not lose a lot of lives before the international community sees it as an important issue to deal with. Um, what happened in what do you call it, uh, Rwanda? It's quite depressing. International community organizations and institutions were pulling out their people, leaving the natives to suffer until a genocide was pronounced. Nothing was done. Do we wait until that happens here? We can keep making those mistakes. Um, it's sad. So let's I don't know if still Brother Okenfe is still with us. I see him online, but Brother Okenfe. Anyway, we'll get to him. But I did forget to mention we have Professor Kwame O'Connell, who is our mentor and a host. Listening in would make one or two contributions if necessary. Otherwise, I know he's listening in with us. Thank you very much, Professor Kwame O'Connell, for always giving us the opportunity to discuss important issues regarding Africa. Really appreciate that. Now, what is the way forward? Either than what we're doing with the UN and with, is there any way we can help in terms of restoring the internet service, the phone service? What can we do?
Mm.
And this is to any of you can.
This is
Yeah.
Foster. This is Foster again. The trouble is when power is so concentrated and the government can just order people to turn up the phones, and then the fact that a company would also give up those rights and stop the desire to protect the people and willfully turn off those services, knowing fully well what the potential consequences could be, it's disturbing. And the question is how do we call these leaders to a dialogue table and say this is not acceptable, this is enough. We are not lions. We are not in the zoo. We need to have a civil discourse to move forward. And just because I disagree with you does not mean I'm radicalized. I disagree with you because we need to find a common ground that's acceptable to you and it is acceptable to me. But my fear is in almost all of these situations, people have made us believe that it is either their way or no way at all, or that they've got the best ideas in the world and they are not willing to listen to people. And we need some kind of external pressure to hold people accountable because, by human nature, we are selfish. And when you push it to this point where the human nature has taken over, my question, therefore, is people who have experienced the advanced democracy and understand what the voice of the people could be, how do we fail to appreciate that? Because fundamentally, we should appreciate it. And if we appreciate it, those that have an influential voice, what are we waiting for? What would it take for the UN, for example, to recognize that this is not an acceptable standard for human rights? For Britain, for France, for the United States, they all have embassies in Cameroon. Does that mean they are not directly seeing these events happen? What is their responsibility to just acknowledge and even say, look, why don't they say we want an acceptable democracy to house our institutions?
Definitely. I think we're going to take a musical break, and then after that we would get back onto this conversation. Let's take a short musical break. I think we're going to take a musical break, and then. Hello, Mambo?
Yes.
Thank you very much. This is heartbreaking.
We definitely have to do something about it immediately.
Yes. Do you think we should write some letters to the State Department as of now?
Yeah, because the last letters that they received was for the Obama administration. It's new people now.
Okay. I think we can note that. And Brother Foster is on?
I am still on.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So if we organize the event at ECOSOC chamber, we have to invite Dr. Foster to bring his own people too from his area.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We'll definitely do that.
Just so I let you know, right now there is a small meeting going on in D.C. Morris is a group that has formed. It's the Movement for the Restoration of the Independence of Southern Cameroon. They have a website. You would probably see a lot of the Cameroon videos on it. It's morisc.org, www.morisc.org, www.morisc.org. I think they are organizing a conference today in Hampton Inn in Maryland. It's a new group that's coming together, and they think enough is enough. They see that the union is not working. They feel like they need their independence, separate from all of this. But the website has a ton of the videos and the information, including the speech that Honorable Wiba made on the House of Assembly floor.
Is it possible for you to say all this stuff when we come back on the air?
Yeah. And then the consortium too had also established a website. It's a
ready to go? Are you guys ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep.
All right. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you to our abled panel. We've been talking about a lot. We've talked about Obama's legacy in Africa, and we have talked about what is going on in the Gambia briefly and what is going on in the Cameroon at length. Sad stories. We very sorry to mar your appetite for good food this weekend with these sad stories, but in reality, those who are suffering the oppression deserve to share in with you today. Your concerns are very vital. We are going to do all we can. Let's go to Brother Foster. By the way, is Brother Okenfe with us now?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah,
too.
Brother Okenfe. Perfect.
Yes.
I'm going to get back to you in a few minutes. Let's hear from Brother Foster. He was telling us about the current organizations that are being mobilized towards a referendum for the Anglophone or Amazonian Cameroonians. Please, Brother Foster.
Yes, I have a couple of websites. Earlier on, I made mention of the fact that our leaders, Barrister Agbo Felix Nkongo, Dr. Fontaine Neba, and Mancho BBC were arrested, and they are being charged in a military court. and their charges involve terrorism, rebellion against the state, incitement of civil unrest, and breach of constitution. They were the leaders of the Cameroon Civil Society Consortium. It's heartbreaking because all these people stood for was for peaceful protest. Part of what they did before their organization got banned and they be jailed, they established a website which is still live. And that website would probably have all of the press releases that they had released before they were arrested. One of them is currently in a hiding because they're actively searching for Mr. Wilfred Tassang. This is the Cameroon Civil Society Consortium. The website would be www.ca-csc.org. ca-csc.org. That's the Cameroon Civil Society Consortium. Also, in the United States and in North America, there is an increased mobilization for everybody to come together under a single umbrella because everybody believes that enough is enough, that this is no longer a peaceful union, that in a marriage, if the wife feels that they're no longer being treated fairly, they have a right to seek for divorce lawfully. And so there is a push to call for a referendum so that all English-speaking Cameroonians can express their opinion, whether they wish to continue in this union as is, they wish to seek for independence, or they wish to return to federation as was when they came together in 1961. Most of the timeline of the recent unrest in Cameroon and capturing some of the gruesome images known to mankind can also be captured on the website of the group that's here in the United States. It's called the Movement for the Restoration of the Independence of Southern Cameroons, MORISC. And that website would be www.morisc.org, morisc.org. As we are speaking, there is a small convention at the Hampton Inn in Maryland to come together and elect the leadership and push forward. One of the most powerful leaders of MORISC in the United States is Dr. Ebenezer Akwanga. In the 1990s, he was the first to recognize all the brutality that the English-speaking Cameroonians went through. And he had been arrested, jailed for several years in the maximum security prison in Cameroon, Kondenge. And he has multiple cases that he has filed against Cameroon at the human rights level. So Dr. Ebenezer Akwanga is probably the most well-known resource on the struggle of Anglophone Cameroonians dating back to the 90s.
Oh, I am actually looking at their website. It's morisc.org. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Let's go back to Brother Okenfe. Brother Okenfe.
Yes.
In all of this, I go back to your initial statement. Before talking about what Obama has done on the continent of Africa, we should ask ourselves, what have our own presidents done? How do we move Africa with this kind of leadership? How do we ensure the future of the millions of young Africans on the continent with this kind of leadership? What do we need to do?
Even before I answer that, let me just say that I was listening to Mr. Foster, and it's just heartbreaking what is going on in Cameroon. I didn't even know it was up to that extent. So it's just heartbreaking. But again, you know, this was also part of, I think, what I said, for Africa to move forward. Africans ourselves, we have to take that responsibility to move our continent forward. Um, right now, I think a lot of the things that can be done is just, it's almost like a revolution of the mind. We've got to start thinking differently. We've got to start thinking of, in terms of public service, what it is to actually serve our particular countries as opposed to serving ourselves. Now, it may be easy to say a revolution of the mind, me being here, living from the comfort of my own home in New Jersey. And when you go to Africa, you're telling someone who's hungry, who hasn't eaten in how many days, telling me about a revolution of the mind. It may sound foreign to that person, but at the same time, but I think with this Young African Leadership Project that President Obama started, I think our people already started that. I think one of the examples that I want to give is when you look at what happened in Nigeria in 2015, when in the history of Nigeria, no president has pretty much given up power willingly. When you had a President Goodluck Jonathan who lost an election, and he said, "Look, there is no," he said, the blood. He said, "There is no blood of a single Nigerian that is worth his ambition." So he said he lost, and he said he's going to gladly step aside to avoid bloodshed, which was something that he did, and now he's been hailed as a hero of democracy. So a lot of these things has to do with also personality, with taking personal responsibility. So right now we just don't. For a lot of times, it doesn't seem like we have leadership that are willing to take that personal responsibility. And so part of the thing, which is part of the thing that I'm doing, is that we have a disconnect in leadership. And how do you start talking to people about leadership? So you've got to start talking to them where they are a lot younger. So on my own, my little way, I'm starting a leadership academy in Nigeria that's pretty much going to start teaching people about virtues of leadership and what it means to be a leader, not just in the political sense, but also in the business sense and also in your everyday responsibility. Because if we do not, as a continent, and also thank God for social media, which has also changed a few things, but my God, if we do not start thinking and doing things differently, it's going to be tough. And so this is the time to really start that thinking and doing things differently, because the old way of doing things it's not working. We've got leaders who are still want to be entrenched in the old ways of status quo that they've been doing things. And so, and part of, the thing about Africans is we don't necessarily know how to listen. We don't know how to listen to our people. We tend to live, some folks tend to live in a bubble that they just forget about the sufferings that normal people are going through. Things that are so simple and trivial that can easily be solved just gets blown out of proportion and becomes something else. So as Africans, this leadership begins from us. So we have a lot of ways to go, but most importantly, though, I think we've got to start thinking differently for the young folks. And if you also look at what is going on, a lot of this violence and stuff, some of the youths are being used to do these things. And they can be used because a lot of these people, they are hungry. They graduate from school, there is no job for them to do. Why? Because our leader never really created that structure for folks to have something to do. And so there's still a lot of gaps that just with the right frame of mind and the right thinking, it can be easily solved. And also in terms of opening up the economy and having people come in and some kind of investment. And I think there are things that we can do, but I think one of the first things it starts with the leadership, and we've got to have a revolution in terms of leadership and how our leadership deals with their people.
Well, if I would paraphrase what Einstein once said, he said, "You cannot change a people at the same state of consciousness at which their problems were created in the first place." So that mental revolution is very key. We also need to strategize as a people, I believe. We cannot be reactionary to circumstances. We need to lay out a plan that we can follow and stick to the plan, so we do not have leaders that can take advantage of our constitution and its amendments during their period of reign to terrorize people. You cannot charge someone with terrorism if the person has not committed any terroristic act. That is unacceptable, and I believe at this particular junction we might want to look into getting some kind of legal advice on the international front that should really hold the Cameroonian government accountable to these people and have them released immediately before we become sorry for what happens to them.
This is Foster. I just talking about even those leaders that were arrested. You may want to know that Barrister Felix Kongo is also the vice president of the African Bar Association. He really understands law. So I hope the African legal system can also step up and say, this is somebody who is our leader and should know our own principles. Let's investigate this and call the government to order. You know, brother, as you were talking, I was just asking myself, it's not that we lack resources. You know, we are poor not because we lack resources. It's fundamentally our leadership. You know, I like to draw a comparison between Cameroon and Ghana. I think, if I'm not mistaken, President Rawlings came to power around the same time Paul Biya came to power. Didn't he come to power in the early 80s?
Yeah, 1980. 79, then 1980, yeah.
Yeah, how many presidents has Ghana had since then? And maybe Cameroon still has the same person.
Right, and even on the economic front, again, talking about that kind of comparison, and let's talk about oil real quick. You know, when they discovered oil in Nigeria and when they discovered oil in the United Arab Emirates, you look at the approximate time over 20 years ago, almost the same thing. Now, look at the transformation in the UAE with regards to what they did with their oil revenues, and look at the non-transformation that happened in Nigeria for over 30 years. So it's not a question of resources. We have them, it is there. For greediness. So I'm
talking about greediness. You know, Biya has a daughter called Brenda Biya. You may want to just Google Brenda Biya net worth and see what comes up. That's the daughter of the president, who is still a student. The daughter of the president used to live in Beverly Hills, California, and would hire a limousine to drop her off in school.
Wow. Imagine.
Not even the rich people in the U.S. would hire a limousine to drop their daughter off for classes. on the college campus. Just Google Brenda Biya, Biya, net worth, and wonder if this is how we manage our resources. It's concentrated so that a few are living in paradise and the majority are languishing. And when they raise their voice, they are labeled as terrorists, they are tortured, they are maimed, they are raped, they are killed, and they are deprived of the fundamental rights that are enshrined in human dignity.
It's just sad.
All right. The phone lines are open for our listeners. Anyone who has some comments to pass, some information to share with us, the number to call is 973-409-6422. Again, the number is 973-409-6422. You're listening to Jersey Ghana Radio. We are on Innocent Africa, discussing all the issues we can that are relevant to the African continent. I am wondering sometimes when I hear information like this, I begin to think of how I can take advantage of it. To talk about Brenda Biya lavishing as a queen in the United States, when majority of Cameroonians cannot just voice an opinion without being humiliated and chastised and tried in military courts. It still baffles me as to what needs to be done in the immediate and long term. I understand the fact that we can look at the leadership front, but how do we do it? Do we do the Neo-Platonic utopian system where children have to be taken from their parents and trained in a whole new paradigm that would shape the future in the direction we want? Or should we just use the current system and just try to infuse new ideas into our education system, moral concepts? How do we go about this? It's
fundamentally, this is Foster. I mean, partially, history is on our side, and at times I don't want to reinvent the wheel. We know that if we exercise certain control measures, then it places us on a path towards progress. As an example, we know that if you decentralize and you allow people to self-govern themselves, as we do in our own homes, there is going to be more order. We know that if we decentralize power and allow for checks and balances, then there would be an opportunity for progressive change. So fundamentally, I think as Africans, we need to accept and look at our governing documents and say, our fundamental principles that curb human recklessness and selfishness enshrined in our guiding documents. Until those are enshrined in unadulterable terms, we keep going through this vicious cycle of one dictator after another dictator after another dictator. Fundamentally, if I quote the example of Cameroon, if the president can appoint and dismiss you by decree, then it's almost unheard of for you to read any results contrary to what he wants. Because look, even on the eve of election results, he can dismiss you, appoint a different person to read those results. So So not to reinvent the wheel, and I also accept that the young generation need a different evolution of the mind. And so all of us need to be involved in different approaches of empowering the young generation, making sure they understand the limits that they and the opportunities that they can have. I personally, I also run a group in Cameroon. I'm really frustrated because all the 50 kids I sponsor in Cameroon cannot get quality education. And really, when they go through school and graduate, they can't get opportunities because they don't have the money to bribe their way into institutions of higher learning, into the professional schools. I run a non-profit group, the Mancon Forum Scholarship Initiative, manconscholarships.org. And I sponsor kids in school in Africa, pick them up when they're 10, and I sponsor them for 5 or so years with the hope that these poor but intelligent kids would one day stand a chance of excelling where their parents couldn't. But if the door is shut for them because they come from a poor background, they can't bribe their way into the medical school, they can't bribe their way into the teachers training school, then my efforts are going to also be wasted because all of those kids would emerge with a GCE O level, and yet they can't progress in life because that's why I stopped the funding for them. So, and here I am paying tuition for them for the whole year, but none of them can go to school as we're speaking because the government is unwilling to negotiate with people today, and then tomorrow labels them as terrorists and goes ahead to arrest them and calls their group unconstitutional and illegal.
Well, this calls for a new Pan-African forum to really kind of address the challenges. We need a forum that is not going to be dictated by the same leaders who sit at the African Union and protect their interests. We need a forum that actually can just focus on the interest of the common person and the future of Africa. Okenfe,
yeah.
Are you with us?
Yeah. Yes, I'm here.
Let's talk about Gambia a little. At least there's a little bit of some good news coming from that country, just to kind of give us a small sense of relief. What is going on in the Gambia right now? It's my understanding that the president has conceded and he's either left office or he's leaving office and handing over power.
Yes. So as of a couple of hours ago, when I last checked online, I think they had agreed to some deal that will make him leave office. Today he was supposed to leave office today, and so we don't know the details of the deals yet. It hasn't been announced, but the thing so far is that he has agreed to leave, to step aside. So I don't know if he's leaving the country and going to another country. I think he may be going to Guinea or something like that. I'm not sure that dynamics in terms of how the deal worked out. So my understanding was that everywhere in Gambia is still quiet. They told people, look, do not jubilate, don't do anything unwarranted until the new president comes into town. So that is as far as that goes. So hopefully, and I have to step off soon. Hopefully, by the time I step off, I'll be able to get some news. But again, now if you look at Gambia and you look at again Zimbabwe and and also to other extent Angola, these people that tend to want to have like presidents. And you look at the U.S. that has had presidents coming and going every 4 years, right? The difference is still clear, which shows that no one person has a monopoly on good ideas. So the more you stay in office and remain in office, the more your people tend to suffer. Just in the case of Africa, look at everything that's going on in Zimbabwe. For over 30 years, Mugabe has been there, refused to step aside and refused to call for an election. Now, I think Zimbabwe, Mugabe was able to stay there that long. I think the Zimbabwean people have to take a lot of blame and responsibility for that because they just allowed him to stay there. I mean, nobody wanted to come out and fight or do anything. So they should not even complain. They bear a lot of responsibility. Now, coming back to the issue of Gambia, and again, the president was there for 22 years. I was in Gambia, I think, in 2015, and it was really peaceful. But again, you could tell that it was still being, that was under dictatorship because there are certain places you go, you are never allowed to take a picture, which to me just made absolutely no sense. But it was relatively peaceful. You had a lot of tourists, you had a lot of Europeans going there for vacation. It was quite nice. And so for me, it was just going to be very unfortunate if the country had disintegrated into war. So I'm glad that, the voice of reason has appealed to the former president, and, he has actually agreed that he's going to be stepping aside. So let him step aside. Go do something else. If after 4 years the new president doesn't do anything, that's the beauty about democracy. If after 4 years he doesn't do anything, then the people also vote him out. So that is one thing that previously Africans really did not understand democracy because we just had these folks who were in power for so long, they just refused to give it up. And so I think the more our people begins to understand the concept of democracy and what it really means, then we'll actually begin to hold people responsible for their acts and for their actions. Look, you said that you want to be the president and you made all these promises and said give you 4 years. If 4 years comes around, you don't do anything, pack your bags and you leave and you vote out. So we can't allow the seat of power in Africa to be entrenched in just one man or one family. Those days have to be long gone. Zimbabwe look like those people still have no clue what they want to do. The president is currently incapable, and now his wife of many years says, look, that she's going to take over. It's not a family business. But the Zimbabweans I know are so meek that none of them is saying both those at home and those in South Africa and those in the U.S. Nobody's saying anything and nobody's doing anything. They're just there. Now, yes, of course, he stood there on past glory. He fought for independence. That was 30 years ago. What has happened since independence? What has it done? I think it was the Republicans who really have a good way with communication and message. When it comes to elections, they tend to ask a certain question, and they say, look, was your life better 4 years ago than now? So if you say your life wasn't better 4 years ago when this person came to office, it's time for him to go. So the question the Zimbabweans should be asking themselves is, since Mugabe and his cohorts were in his power, has their life been better for the past 30 years? If the answer is no, why is he still there?
Let me ask you this then. There's this conflict with the reign of Mugabe as opposed to some of the other African leaders, especially when it comes to who is going to replace Mugabe. I totally disagree with the fact that one person should lead a country for more than 2 terms. But in the case of Mugabe, how do we reconcile? We're looking at someone like Morgan Changarai, who has been flaunted around among Western countries to replace Mugabe, even to the point of trying to arrange for an assassination if possible. Yeah.
My fear is that our leadership has been suppressed with that discussion. The better question I would ask is, would Mugabe live forever? Because if you accept that one day he's going to die, then implicitly you've said there is going to be another leader.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have implicitly said there is going to be another leader, it doesn't matter how good you could be. Look, Obama said something before he left. I can run for elections and win again. I can run for elections and win again.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But I have to leave.
Obviously,
so same thing should happen.
Obama gave it up to someone like Trump. Mugabe can give it up for even more than Changarai.
And
if it's a trash person, they rule for 4 years, and then we have a chance to say you're not good.
Yep.
We've tested you.
Now, let me quickly acknowledge the presence of Sofie. Welcome, Sofie.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. We are doing fine here. Thanks for joining in. We have talked about so many things in your absence. We discussed the legacy of President Barack Obama on the continent of Africa, and we've talked about the frustrating and disgusting situation in the Cameroon. We were just a little on the issue of the Gambia and general African leadership when you just joined us. So welcome.
Thank you.
We lost Brother Okenfe, but it's all right. So let's get to you since you just got in. We have about 15 minutes more to go, so we can give you some time to chime in on some of these conversations. We were just discussing the issue of the extended stay in power for the likes of Mugabe or Biya. We have Yoweri Museveni, and some of these leaders around the continent that have overstayed their welcome on the seat. If you have anything to add to it, you can please do. Or actually, you can also update us on your latest development with your organization.
Thank you very much for updating me, and I'm sorry I missed, but I'm going to listen to the audio. First of all, I would like to say congratulations to Africans on Gambia's leader agrees to leave, unfortunately, by military intervention. I believe that since 1960s, study shows that it's less than 10% that the African leaders left office voluntarily. That's not a good news.
Definitely not.
Having said that, the need for a sustainable solution for Africa to be able to be governed by the rule of law and embrace democracy could only, I think, resonate if we have a struggle that's coordinated from bottom up. therefore, it's very important to have a grassroots movement going on in Africa as well as everywhere. By the way, we are also in trouble where we are right now with the new government, Trump taking power. I mean, as a woman, the issue of equal right for women, let there be the equal pay, that's out of the window, and plus the Roe v. Wade is another one that's going to be outlawed with the congressional, the majority being Republicans, and pro-life. It's not pro-choice. Pro-life is not pro-choice. So this is really a minus or rolling back all the civil rights movement or gratification that we got from civil rights movement. All those civil rights laws are under challenge since we have already 21 states in the country where, such as Section 5 of the Civil Rights Law, that's going to be under attack by instituting the voter ID laws in all those states, which helped them to win, as you know, in the electoral wise decisively. So as an African woman, I am very concerned, not only what's happening in Africa, but also what's happening here, the decimation of union and the deregulation, the banks, the unreining of the bank, even the common sense bank reform that took place, Frank and Dad, that's going to be in danger. Credit cards, plus the healthcare reform, the affordable healthcare is under attack, leaving 20 million people without healthcare, impacting about 150 million people whose insurance would go up by changing the laws that are already in place, regarding the Affordable Health Care Act. So EPA is another issue. All those would impact, especially people of color or minorities in this country, as well as Africans in Africa, because of this unreined Wall Street investment in the name of land grab, in the name of occupying Africa, I believe, recolonizing Africa, would take place, freely. And this is going to be a very scary moment. The strengthening of AFRICOM in Africa would be another issue. So we are in that situation. However, we have to do what we have to do. The Ethiopian coalition, the organization that I belong to, called the Ethiopian People's Congress for United Struggle, and then among two others, the Ethiopian National Council and the Ethiopian Youth Movement, sponsored a political meeting as of the 14th of January last week, and as of the 13th to the 14th. And after discussing all the different political stands, they were able to come up with a decision to move the struggle forward. As you know, a coalition should be formed based on common beliefs and common interests that whoever participates. And then the objectives of those, coalition also should be clear, and everyone should be on the same page in terms of the structure, the working method, and the relationship of the coalition to member organizations, and at the same time, those bylaws. So finally, they came up with some decisions, which I try to outline them, trying to translate them from Amharic to English. They were agreed to uphold the Ethiopian sovereignty, and number two, the protection of individual rights, Number 3, the establishment of democratic institutions. And number 4, the respect to the rule of law. And then number 5, the inclusive governance, to establish inclusive governance free of ethnic violence, ethnic exploitation. In Africa, we're very familiar with that. And number 6, my favorite subject, good governance, to install good governance throughout. And number 7, in order to make all this possible, there got to be a transitional government being in place, and that transitional government should be sustainable. And in order to do that, we have to involve all the various stakeholders involved in this situation. To carry out all this, they have named 2 committees. One who focuses on the temporary solution. I would say Ethiopia is under state of emergency right now, as you know. So people are living in prison, literally. They have no right to speak, right to exercise their democratic rights, right for assembly. So the prisons are, really right now so full. We have over 100,000+ prisoners right now as we speak, political conscious prisoners.
Hold on for me for a second.
Okay.
We lost a caller. Please, I just realized you had called. Please call back so we can get your questions through with our panelists. Someone was going to say something. You can go ahead.
Okay. So the first committee, there are 2 committees. One is going to look through forming a task committee that deals with, for instance, addressing issues of human rights violation and issues of the state of emergency, how we can get rid of that by collaborating with other organizations, the international community, for the Ethiopian government to disallow this state of emergency that's going on the past almost 4 months right now, because they have a tendency to say that they could renew this state of emergency. This is like close the doors everywhere and then do whatever you can. That's the kind of situation. So decimating the rights of people, women, children, we're all at risk. And that first committee would work on providing assistance to victims of human rights violation at the moment, and then work also through the diplomatic effort. The second one and the major one is looking for an alternative solution, long-term alternative solution that's going to involve more work, and it's by its nature complex. So we're working towards that, and we appreciate all the help we need to raise consciousness on this issue, issue of bringing solution to all African countries. Possibly we start block by block, and Ethiopia is, as you can see, under state of emergency. So I would like to address that in such a manner. So I appreciate very much. If you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sofie.
You're welcome.
I think young Africans, when we do meet to really kind of talk about these things, we have to set a timeline. Say by 2030, there should not be any single dictator on the continent of Africa, and we should be able to do something about that to make sure it doesn't happen. It's all about mobilizing. We can do that. We lost a caller, so we have about 3 more minutes. So I would say let's use this 3 minutes to wrap up and make our final and closing remarks as best as we can, starting with Mr. Foster.
Thanks again. Thanks, Jesse Ghana Radio, for giving us an opportunity to come on your show and continue to talk about the plight of the African person in general and the Cameroonian in particular. Um, as I talk to you, I know that if no intervention is hastily taken in Cameroon, the minorities, which are the Anglophone speaking Cameroonians, are going to likely suffer another fate like Rwanda and Burundi, like Bosnia, like Aleppo. The disconnection of internet services, which is fundamental to human communication, begets the question of what's happening behind the scenes. When the curtain is finally raised, how many people would have disappeared and how many would have been killed? I like to call on the international community to look and pressure the situation so that the voice of the people can be exercised. There is no reason why we should continue to live under dictatorships since 1982, and democracy cannot be exercised in the 21st century. Agreements, the Constitution of the people is a legal document that should not be changed on a day-to-day basis, and really, it's despicable that as we speak, peaceful leaders are being arrested, detained, tortured, and being brought sentences of terrorism and inciting violence against them, and their lives are on the line as we're speaking. It's unfortunate that I'm speaking from a country where I have an opportunity to voice my opinion, whether it's heard or not, and yet peaceful people where I come from are being killed and raped on student campuses, and we are being covered with tape degrees that would have no use because we do not have money to buy our way through the gridlock system in our country. Just want to invite everybody to pray for Cameroon and put them in your prayers. And not only pray, but please get out, make a phone call, and let us call Africa to action. We just went through Gambia. There is no reason why we can't intervene in like manner in Cameroon. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Brother Foster. We do have a lot of questions to ask, but I think because of time limitation, we would try and then reorganize another program like this, where we'll just discuss Cameroon for the 2 hours of the program. Let's turn back to Sofie for your closing remarks.
Thank you very much. I really want to second my brother that we need to have Africa to action. Action comes from purpose. We need to have purpose. We need to have strategy to attain that action. So I think the main thing that matters to Africa is this idea of the culture of democracy must take roots in Africa. That's not the culture of democracy what we have in Africa. What we have in Africa is the culture of dictatorship. You know, it has become normal. Others help, meaning the West helped to normalize dictatorship. They even say that they prefer dictatorship in terms of stability over democracy. So we need to be cognizant of what Africa wants. What do we want? Where do we see Africa in about 50 years? We are the people who need to take a major interest in our problems and looking for solutions. So we need to have some sort of coalition that we have to work on, that's based on trust, mutual respect, and which is, African. Mutual respect is Africans. Africans respect each other by nature. So we have to cultivate that. We have to cultivate the culture of how participatory democracy works in Africa. We need to plant the seeds in there. So we need to have a common vision, a common national vision or agenda that would take us Africa for a sustainable future. So in this, we need to start somewhere. We need to, as I said, we need to start block from block. Each block, from each block to each district, from each district to all the village, we call it in Africa. However, we are a big village as we are, but we need to put our potential, and we need to have our energy and know-how in how to create this action. So we need to have a specific goals. As my friend Kwame said earlier, what would be the specific date? Where do we want to see Africa, in the near future? I thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. We're going to turn to Mambo to thank you all for being with us today. Mambo?
Yeah, thank you very much for setting up this platform, Sadick. And I would like to also thank Kofi for coming up with the idea for this show, and Professor O'Connor for being one of the advisors. I would also like to thank Dr. Foster for coming up and explaining in detail exactly what's going on in Cameroon, because I couldn't have done a better job. He was just amazing in terms of the information, very factual and true. I would also like to thank the guests that were here today, especially the lady that spoke towards the end. It is important and imperative that, we young people rise up and take control of our destinies when it comes to the leaders that are speaking on our behalf. We can no longer allow people to stay longer than what they need to, especially when they're not bringing forth any improvement or change to the nation. It's very disheartening what is happening with my people in Cameroon, and it's very disheartening to see all the people that are being hurt, the people that are being imprisoned, the people that are being raped, the people that are being dragged in sewers. We can be polite and call it mud, but at the end of the day, I was recently in Cameroon. I was in Cameroon in July of last year. So I know that's not mud. I know that's like sewer water coming out of people's houses that you carried people's children and went and rubbed in there. It's very humiliating, and this I don't even know how to put it in words. But I would like to thank the people out there for listening to our plight, and know that the websites are there for you to find out more information. Even though the president has blocked off communication with the people over there, we are doing our best to try and call in. If somebody has a way that they can educate our people on how to actually sending out images online, please try to reach out to the show. I will most definitely get the information. Thanks again, Sadick, for this opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, Mambo. Thank you, Okenfe, Sofie, Mr. Foster. At Jersey Ghana Radio, what we do is to try and then talk Africa. Look forward to Africa. We want to channel the path for the future of Africa with your voice, our listeners' voice, and the entire African continent would owe us its posterity. Thank you very much for being with us, and we see you next week. Have a good weekend.
Thank you very much, Kwame, and to Ghana Radio for giving us this opportunity. And
You're
I
welcome.
think thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.